Byron Allen, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Walter. Thank you for having me.
Congratulations. You've taken over the time slot on CBS that long was held by Stephen Colbert. How long have you wanted to do that?
I've been chasing that for over 51 years, since I was 14 years old and I met Johnny Carson at the NBC studios in Burbank. So I tell everybody, Walter, I'm a 65-year-old overnight sensation.
And tell me about those early years in comedy.
Well, my mom, who's not only beautiful, she's brilliant. She got pregnant with me when she was 16 and had me 17 days after her 17th birthday. And I tell everybody I have 2 high school diplomas. And I was born in Detroit, Michigan in April of 61. And Martin Luther King was assassinated in April of 68. And the riots broke out. Detroit got lit up like a Christmas tree. And my mom and I decided to come out to LA and visit friends and family for a couple of weeks in summer of 68. And we ended up staying. And it was slim pickings when we got here, sleeping on a lot of floors and a lot of sofas and spare rooms where we could find it. And my mom ended up getting into UCLA and getting her master's degree in cinema TV production. And because she got her master's degree in cinema TV production from UCLA, she was able to go all over town and ask for jobs and knocked on a lot of doors, got a lot of no's. And she finally went to NBC and said, "Hey, do you have any jobs?" And they said, "No." And she asked, "Do you have an intern program where I can work here for free?" And they said, "No." And then she asked a question that changed our lives forever. She said, "Will you please start one with me?" And they said, "Yes." And because she could not afford childcare, she took me to work quite often. And after school and during the summer, and I would go from studio to studio to studio, waiting for my mom to get off work. And I'm standing there and I see Johnny Carson do the Tonight Show. And I would go across the hall and I would watch Red Fox tape his show, Sanford and Son, and Freddie Prinze tape Chico and the Man, and Flip Wilson tape his show, and Bob Hope do his specials. And I thought, what a wonderful way to go through life, making television and making people laugh. So I started doing stand-up comedy when I was 14.
And you started getting paid per joke, is that right?
Yeah. I was performing at the Comedy Store. My first time at the Comedy Store, I was 14 years old. It was Monday night tryout night. And they said, get there early. And they said, the doors open at 7:00. People line up to try out. So I took the bus. I was 14. I took the bus. I got there at 9 a.m. And I sat there on the curb and I wrote jokes and waited for them to open the door. And I went on stage. And this guy, it was basically 4 people and 200 chairs. So I had to figure out how to make 200 chairs laugh. And I went on stage and performed. And this guy said, "Hey, who wrote those jokes?" He came right up to me. I said, I wrote them. He said, "Those were funny." I said, "Thanks. That was the idea." He said, "Let me get your number. I know somebody that may want to work with you." I said, "No problem." And a week or two later, I got a call. And this guy says to me, "Can I speak to Byron?" I said, "This is Byron." He said, "This is Jimmy J.J. Walker, Kid Dynamite." And Jimmy Walker was the hottest comedian in by far on the planet. He was the star of Good Times on CBS. And he said, "My man Wayne Klein says you're funny. And if my man Wayne Klein says you're funny, then you must be funny." I said, "Yes, tell Wayne thank you. I appreciate that." He says, "I'm sitting in a writer's meeting. Do you want to come and write some jokes with me and my boys?" I said, "Let me ask my mom." My mom says yes. She drops me off at Jimmy's apartment. I walk in, and sitting there is Jimmy Walker, the biggest television star in America at that time, Jay Leno, who was sleeping in his car, and Dave was Dave Letterman, and who had just driven out from Indianapolis in a red pickup truck. And Jeff
Those were
stopped.
the joke writers for
Those
him,
were the
right?
joke
And
writers.
tell me real quick, how did you create jokes at 14? What was the method?
Observational comedy for me. I was talking about my life. I was just really just studying what was going on in the world. Just really appreciated a lot of the comedians. Very clean, family oriented back then. This is the mid 70s. This is 1975, summer of 75. So I was just really just sharing my experiences, dealing with my mother, my father, my friends.
So make him feel welcome, would you? Byron Allen.
But it was a very political period, and you tended to steer clear of political jokes, even to this day. Why? And am I right?
You know what? I've never done political humor. It was just, it wasn't my thing. I mean, there's a great place for political humor. There are folks who love it, who appreciate it. My entire career has been about evergreen comedy, comedy that you can listen to today, 20 years from now, 40 years from now, 60 years from now. When I started doing Comics Unleashed with Byron Allen 20 years ago, I said to the comedians 20 years ago, I said, listen, we're doing I Love Lucy. It's evergreen. I don't want you to do anything that's political. I don't want you to do anything that's racist or sexist or anti Semitic or homophobic. Just talk about your lives, just be relatable, include everybody, make everybody feel good. We're here to help people laugh.
Well, wait, that's really different from the way late night comedy has been recently, and especially, of course, with Colbert. There were controversies about him being political and controversies about that, whether CBS sort of got pushed him out because he was too political. Do you think that there's a particular place now to just get rid of politics, or is that avoiding the issues?
No, I think there's plenty. There will always be plenty of political humor. That's not going to go away. You know, there are easily 7 comedians doing political humor. You have Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers, Jimmy Kimmel, Bill Maher, John Oliver, Jon Stewart, Greg Gutfeld. That's just 7 to name a few.
But do you think CBS felt more comfortable with you because you weren't political, given all that they've been through?
No, I think it was purely an economic decision. The ratings are slipping in across linear television, and when the ratings slip, the ad dollars move. Advertisers don't print money; they shift money. So you can't ignore the fact that approximately 50% of all viewership is now sitting with streaming. So as people forget that Jay Leno took a 50% pay cut. People forget that Seth Meyers, they cut his band. There are a lot of folks where they have said to the late night, comedians, hey, the ratings aren't what they used to be. We now need to adjust this financially. People should remember that it's not show business, it's business show. Now, if you look at the ratings and you approach it as business show, what you'll notice is that Colbert's ratings, and not just Colbert, anybody doing political humor, but in the case of Colbert, his repeats were negative 52%. Because when you're doing political humor, you're talking about the news from 8 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago, when you repeat the show. Because we didn't do political or topical humor, our repeats were only negative 14%.
So you're using a lot of repeats then, and this helps the business model, is what you're saying?
No, I'm not using a lot of repeats. I was just saying that when you do political humor, it doesn't repeat as well versus not doing it, because when you do political humor, it's very topical. We wanted to have something that was more sustainable, that you could play it, a year from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
So tell us about your new show and what can viewers expect during this rollout?
Our show is simple. We are here to make you laugh. That's all we want to do, make you laugh. And I'm sitting there with 4 other comedians, 2 to my right, 2 to my left. And I have to tell you, in the 20 years I've been doing the show, I'm so impressed with the comedians I'm seeing today, because they grew up having access to every comedian. When I started stand-up in 75, I saw the comedians at the Comedy Store that showed up. That's it. And now they are on the internet and they see every comedian that has ever engaged in the art of comedy.
You talk about it being show business. You talk about it being show business.
Business show.
Yeah.
Business show, not show business.
And you've created a really big business empire. I think people probably don't quite realize that you come at this as an entrepreneur and as a builder of a big business. Tell me how you decided to become a media baron in that way.
Well, first of all, thank you for asking. Here's what I would say, Walter. I learned early on, ideas are a dime a dozen. The key words are execution and distribution of those ideas. I invested a little over $1 billion buying ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox affiliates. And I sat on the CBS affiliates board. I gave up my seat to my president of broadcasting, who works for me, and I sit on the board of the National Association of Broadcasters. But when I sat on the CBS affiliates board and these other stations that we own and control, I said, look, I don't know why we're spending so much money to win late night, because even though you win, all you're doing is handing me an audience at 1:30 in the morning that I'm going to use to, go right into a 1-800 spray on hair, 1-800 infomercials, right? 1-800 abs in 24 hours. And I said, I understand why you would invest a great deal of capital to win in the morning, 7 to 9, in the afternoon with your game shows and your soap operas, in the evening with the evening news and in prime time. But we don't need to deploy resources to win late night to go into 1-800 spray on hair infomercials. I said, save that money. They were losing over 40 million a year on Colbert. The show was costing 110, 120 million, according to CBS. I said, okay, you've decided not to go forward with Colbert. I can save you that 40 million plus pay you 15 million for that hour. So that's a $55 million positive swing in your direction. And I will put a show in there where the ratings will be comparable. And the ratings are comparable. When you compare our May 22nd to May of 25 for Colbert, our ratings were 5% less than his. And that does not include the cord cutting in the last year of 5 to 10% of the audience going away. They have received a $55 million positive swing. They're not spending 110 to 120 million, plus they're getting 15 million from us. So it's a big win, and it's going to be a model that's going to revolutionize network TV forever, because the networks are spending an enormous sum on live sports. And once again, you don't print money, you shift it. And as they all have to get their live sports to be competitive, they have less for entertainment content. And as an owner of ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox affiliates, I had a front row seat to that. And I say, if this math doesn't work, and the way I can be helpful is to start providing content that is competitive and at the same time can save you an enormous sum of capital.
So you've explained that you're paying $15 million, right, for leasing, let's say, that hour of CBS.
Yes.
That helps them economically.
And they don't lose 40 million, because they were losing 40 million.
So explain how that works. You just go to them and say, I'll pay you for this hour, and then you collect the revenues from the advertising and things. And you think that can be a template going forward?
Yeah, I bought the entire 2 hours. I also bought the hour behind, the 11:30 hour. So I bought the 11:35 hour, and that's Comics Unleashed with Byron Allen, 2 half hours back to back. And also, right after that, I have 2 half hours back to back of Funny You Should Ask, our comedy game show. So I bought a 2 hour comedy block. So we have 2 hours per night, 10 hours per week, 520 hours per year on CBS, making us the largest provider of network content to the #1 network in America, providing more hours than all of the studios combined. Now, with that, Walter, we have 14,000, a little over 14,000 30-second spots that we have to go sell to advertisers. And those advertisers buy our spots. That's how we fund the production of the show, and we fund the acquisition of the 520 hours over that 1 year period. That is a revolutionary business model that I created. And I've created this new platform, and I knew that the network, and all the networks, quite frankly, they need it, because they're spending billions on top of billions to acquire the rights to live sports.
Now, could this model spread either by you doing more? And would it have to be with CBS? Are you exclusive to them?
No, I'm non-exclusive, and I can tell you that pretty much all the networks have come to me and said, what can you do for us? So all the networks are definitely saying, how can we work together? Now, keep in mind, I have the infrastructure. I own the Weather Channel. I own, 11 other cable networks and digital platforms, BuzzFeed, HuffPost. I have 74 shows in syndication. I am the largest provider of first run television shows, once again, providing more first run shows than all the studios combined. I have close to 2,000 employees. I started the company from my dining room table, just me and my mom and a talent booker. And we've built it up to now what is approximately 2,000 employees, and hundreds of them sell advertising. So this is what we do every day. I'm in business with hundreds of advertisers directly. So my infrastructure puts me in this position to produce the content at a very efficient price. And I have the ability to buy the time period and sell the advertising because I already have, a platform that employs 2,000 people, approximately 2,000 people. And this is what they do each and every day.
Are you worried about the fading of linear TV, even to this business model that you've done? And how have you hedged against that in your business?
Great question. I'm not worried about it. Nothing ever really goes away. When the movie industry came along over 100 years ago, everybody's like, okay, this is the movie industry. You can now say that, and then radio came along, and then everybody said, well, that's a wrap. The movie industry is going to now suffer. And then TV came along, and they said, well, goodbye movies and goodbye radio. And that didn't happen. And here comes cable, and here comes, VHS and DVDs. Everything became additive along the way. Nothing replaced it. It enhanced everything. It made it better. Television made the movies better. It was another place to go and monetize the movies. DVDs made the movies better. Cable, everything made it all better. The landscape becomes more textured. So none of it's going to go away. Linear will always be here. Linear TV will be here.
Byron Allen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Walter. Really appreciate it.